Good morning, everyone. We're just gonna wait a few seconds. I can see lots of people are joining now. So I'm gonna start very promptly, maybe in about 30, 40 seconds. It's great. I can still see lots of people joining. So just a few more seconds. Maybe I'm just gonna explain some technicalities. I will be not able to answer to any chat option during my speaking, so I can fully focus on the presentation. But if there are any questions and if we have time, I'll be very happy to answer some questions at the very end. I can see lots of attendees from Belgium, Scotland, where I went 2 weeks ago. Hello, everyone. Really nice to see you. Okay, because those numbers are still going up, I'm gonna wait a few more seconds. I can see, okay, Dubai, Germany, Italy, Australia. Wow, it's impressive. Cambridge. Hello, everyone. Sussex. Okay. Okay, this is going so fast. I can see Russia and Kent. It's going really super fast now. Canada. Excellent. Well, buenos dias. That's from London, South London, not far away from me. I'm from London. France, Singapore, Bangladesh. Wow. Moscow, Egypt. Okay, great. Ireland. Hello, everyone. Okay, just 20 more seconds. Morning. Okay, Spain. Wow, I'm really impressed. I think that's what virtual events make, how special they make our presentations. You can just watch me anywhere, at any time. Japan, wow. I'm really feeling the pressure right now before I start. Turkey. Okay, hello, everyone. And I think I'm just gonna start my presentation now. And I'm pretty sure people will be still joining us a few minutes later, but hello, everyone. I'm going to display my presentation, which you should be able to see in about a few seconds. You should be able to see my screen. I know it doesn't look very exciting right now, but that's my presentation. So at the very beginning, you should all see my slide now with the title, Make Them Listen Like No Other. That's my contact email, which I'm gonna display at the very end of my presentation. But if there are any burning questions, any inquiries, I'm very happy to answer it in case we don't have time at the end, or in case I don't have time to answer your question at the very end of this session. So my name is Witold Wozniak. I'm a lead practitioner for MFL. And before I go to my session, I'm just gonna tell you a little bit about myself. As you can see, I look more like this than at the previous picture. So I'm a lead practitioner for modern foreign languages. I teach French and Italian, even though Italian doesn't happen very often, but occasionally I do some GCSEs or run Italian club at Coombe Girls Academy. So I teach across all the 4 key stages because my academy consists of 2 secondary and 3 primary schools. So occasionally my timetable is divided between teaching some afternoons at Key Stage 2, and I have a history in teaching in primary school languages only as well, but also I have some Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 classes. So I'm gonna refer to those stages during my presentation today. I'm a mentor for NQT and student teachers, and also I work for AQA. Obviously those exams didn't happen last year, but I also mark French speaking exams, and also part of the Kingston Merton Primary Languages Network, help organize the termly training sessions for specialist and non-specialist language teachers, including our primary language conference, which happens every year. Also, I'm not all about languages. I love donuts. Krispy Kremes are my favorites. And I presented sessions at the language show since the UK voted to leave the European Union. And also I love Starbucks, my favorite coffee, and I love fitness. And I have a Instagram page at Witold Fitness. So it's all about a healthy balance for me. So, well, I'm not going to be talking about fitness today, so no worries. Well, kind of. It's going to be about being fit to listen. So my presentation today, I'm going to present over 20 Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 4 listening strategies to boost your students' confidence and understanding of vocabulary. Cross-curricular resources that can be easily adapted, assessed, and differentiated. So I'm going to sometimes mention those elements of assessment for learning that you can easily apply, and also ideas for listening homework, where anything which is being taught in the classroom can be taken beyond and enjoyed or explored by the students further. So I'm going to start my presentation with this slide, which is quite obvious, isn't it? And again, I'm not going to be talking about sharks or camels today, but sharks don't know that camel exists. Why I'm saying that? I had a few thoughts when I was preparing this session and joining some ideas together. And I came to a conclusion that one cannot hear what one doesn't know. So you cannot understand a word that, or you cannot hear it sometimes in a conversation if you don't know about. Also, you notice what you are aware of. So understand, for instance, our understanding of tsunami probably was really reinforced after what happened in 2004. Before, maybe we wouldn't be hearing these words or understanding this word in its full capacity. Or maybe there are different words in different languages for describing rain or snow, and noticing different patterns, where in some languages, one word would be describing everything. So you only notice, oh, it's a drizzle, because you are aware how drizzle looks like. When in some other languages, it could be a rain only. So one attempt isn't sufficient. So we don't learn a word by hearing it once. And this is just like if you learn how to walk or ride a bike, one attempt is not going to be sufficient. And listening isn't a vacuum. So it's an audio registration of what's written, said, or read. What I mean by that, this is kind of a matrix combination. It's a combination of there's a strong correlation between writing, reading, and speaking. I'm going to demonstrate it in my session. So what I'm saying is listening is not a lonely pillar by itself. You have to definitely link it to other areas of your teaching. So let's think of our ears as if they were a muscle. So you need to exercise it. The more you exercise it, the more they're going to be able to hear. So sometimes, just like in fitness, repetition and practice makes you perfect. And they need to be exercised constantly. So we cannot be teaching listening once a term thinking that's going to be sufficient. There needs to be some continuity. And also, you cannot tell the words apart in the language you don't speak. And I know, I've noticed already, there are some Polish speakers, but I'm going to read one sentence in Polish. And I just would like you to listen for it and have a think. Can you at least differentiate with one word, okay? So trudno jest odróżnić słowa szybko wypowiadane w języku, którego się nie zna. And coming back to this sentence, you cannot tell the words apart in the language you do not speak. If you have no reference to some words or some context of the language, it's very difficult. Sometimes it's all sounds the same. And it's very important when we teach, remember that if you're going to expose our students to something completely new, they may feel very vulnerable with this listening practice. And curriculum is a journey. So with no shortcuts, it's the whole race that matters. And that's what I'm going to take into consideration when presenting some ideas. So the very first one is a classic, is when you have a listening practice, and as I said, it is not a lonely pillar. It's a good practice to make your students read the texts they're gonna listen to. So you can make them read first, then you can tell them, okay, put it upside down, make them listen and answer the questions. Then instead of providing them with the answers, they read it again. So you turn it into a reading practice where they self-mark themselves with a little assistance from your side and see what they haven't understood. And at the very end, they will listen. So I know it's not a proper listening, but it's a very useful scaffolding to combine reading and independent work with listening, where they are exposed to something, but then they cannot see it when they complete the listening. And I know listening can be a put-off experience for many students, or a scary one. And I think this is a little bit of TLC and like me scaffolding that can build more confidence at very early stages during the academic year. So a different strategy could be to prep your students. So you provide your students only with some keywords that they do not know. So you pick up some, for instance, this is a list of a little passage that we're going to listen in a few seconds. And I thought some of my students, maybe they wouldn't be able to understand or relate to those words, or they will be those who will confuse them. So I'm prepping my students. I make them read it. So it's a little bit of reading and speaking. I make them write it, we explain it, probably would encourage the use of dictionaries, and then they're gonna listen so they will be provided with those questions. So they have those 3 questions. They are told they have to answer in French. We quickly run through those questions so they have a full understanding. So this is in addition to those words you've just seen, and then I'm gonna make them listen. So I'm just gonna quickly exit this. I'm going to play this file so you can just have a few seconds of listening for this. Okay, I'm just gonna, sorry, it's gonna work definitely. I just need to reload the page. It happened to me last time. Bear with me. I'm gonna make it work. Good. Okay. Fingers crossed. I'm not going to be using audio files because it really takes time, but at least this one will be an example. So they have questions.
Question 1A.
Okay. So this is
Henri, est-ce que tu penses que notre société est égalitaire?
Malheureusement, non, elle n'est pas égalitaire. Par exemple, je suis né et j'ai grandi en France, mais certains me traitent différemment parce que je suis noir. C'est raciste et ça me gêne beaucoup.
okay. I'm not gonna play the full listening, but it gives you an idea. As you can see already, a word from grandir appeared in this listening, and that's gonna definitely help in understanding. So what you do after listening, they answer obviously questions in French, and then they reread exactly what we've just listened to. So again, you turn it into reading, marking, self-marking, and a reflection, what I didn't hear, which other words I didn't understand, and obviously then they can re-listen. So it's very important that they re-listen to it, being more mindful about what they weren't able to hear first or second time. And coming back to this listening in a few weeks' time wouldn't be a bad practice, because again, let's remember, we need to exercise their ears. And it's like listening to the radio. If you would be listening to the same podcast, or let's say listening to the same song, you should be able to hear much more. Okay, a different strategy could be to discuss questions, because in every time now I'm referring more to Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4, and I'm going to present some more Key Stage 2 ideas later, but that's kind of a Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4 example. And when you look at questions which are in English, I always tell my students that they are a little bit of giveaway, because just by looking at those questions, discussing those questions, we can see that they will be discussing some social issues. They may be maybe mentioning education, same rights, being able to find a job. And I always say, you already know they're not going to be talking about going on holiday. They're not going to be talking about relationships. So it puts the mind into a mood where you can also have 1 minute of brainstorming different keywords and expressions. So this is open discussion about the questions so they can prepare themselves and maybe highlight some words and write some words in French. Then they listen, and again, after listening, they can read the transcription and see how much they've understood. So again, when you can offer even some sentences like those ones here, where they can you can discuss some grammar issues or some keywords. So this is a little bit differentiated, where I would say everyone try to translate the full sentence, but if that's too much, only things like il y a 5 ans, le même droit, je peux, la guerre, il faut. So just focus on some key vocabulary that will decide about your answers being successful or not. Now, another strategy which I use with my students, it's link and recycle. And there are two different ways of doing it. So this is more key stage, late key stage 3, definitely key stage 4 orientated. This is Waggle, what a good one looks like. And this is a 150 words piece of writing for GCSE. And this is an example. So I provide sometimes my students with some examples of, let's say, a perfect writing. And obviously, this is more about their reading and writing. But a good strategy is to provide them with the same 150 words, but with some gaps. So where they have to listen. So you read it to them, but some words are not there. So let's imagine, for instance, you could, en vacances, you could get rid of en vacances or s'amuser. And what they do, they know the text and they should remember they got it, but this time they have to listen and remember how to spell it. So you practice at the same time they're listening, but also they're writing. That's why I mentioned this matrix where you combine skills. So even if it's easy for some students, is they are still practicing understanding, possibly translation and spellings. A different way of doing link and recycle it could be where you provide your students with a translation. So you present with this translation and you give them a few minutes to draft as much as they can. You can provide them with some words for this translation. And then what you do, this is the gap translation of this passage. So just coming back, unemployment is a big problem in my town. Most examples are in French, but I'm going to give some examples in other languages later as well. And what happens is I would give probably my student 1 minute to try and complete it in French, but then I would read it to them. And as you can see, this is kind of a listening / dictation strategy, but they will be very willing to listen because you give them the answers. So it's a little hook. You're pretending to help them, but actually also this is a good listening practice, and somehow they can hear so much more, and also they have reference to some keywords they had seen in English before that. And after that, obviously, sharing time when you display the answers and they can see whether the spelling was correct or not. Another thing would be to display some target words. So you don't need to provide with some specific sentences before listening, but you can just revise some target words that will be appearing in listening, just kind of prompting them, okay, now we will revise, let's say, places in town, because they will be listening about places in town. But also you can make your students single out certain specific words. And this strategy can be applied at key stage 2 and early stages of key stage 3. So what I mean is you can, I mean, whiteboards are great for that, where you can say a word in Spanish or German, for instance, day of the week. Sorry, the other way around. You say a day of the week in English. So you say, for instance, Thursday, and they have to write it in German, or they have to write it in Spanish. Or the other way, you can say Mercoledi, and they have to write Wednesday. So depending, this is kind of a response. So you say something, they have to respond in a different language, but only focusing on one word or one specific topic. They can also draw it, but it's a good response if students are able to respond with the whiteboards, or maybe by reacting to a word which they've heard. So a different thing could be spy it, and that's students love it. So you read some words. So for instance, let's imagine you're teaching Portuguese, and all your students have to do, they have to react to a word which is out of context. So it's all about listening, and they have to leave their hands up or they have to clap their hands. I mean, sky's the limit. You can decide what works best in your class. So for instance, you read domingo, segunda-feira, terça-feira, quarta-feira, boa tarde, quinta-feira. And your students have to obviously clap their hands when they hear boa tarde, good afternoon, because the rest is all days of the week. And can be the other way around, where they, a red example in French, where they have to clap their hands if they hear days of the week, for instance, only days of the week. So you read lundi, trousse, poisson, 15, jeudi, cheveux, rigolo, timide, and so on. That can be with anything. So you just want to prompt some kind of response when they hear a specific single word. Good approach, especially in year 7, building confidence and boosting their results, and also exercising the ears to hear, for instance, that 15, or let's say you can even do it with numbers from 1 to 10 and 10 to 20. And I know in lots of languages, it can be a little bit confusing, especially in French, and they only clap hands if they hear numbers above 10. And then differentiating between 5 et 15, 13, 3, everyone's nightmare, obviously becomes really, really helpful. Also, listening for structures is a good strategy for listening. So it doesn't have to be focusing on questions related to the text and answering full sentences about the text. It's more about listening maybe for past tense verbs. So you play a text and you say, can you note all the verbs in the past tense? Or can you listen for connectives? Can you note places in town, how many places in town they've mentioned? So it's just listening for something very specific. And that's a good build-up before you throw some questions at your students, and you're going to expect a full answer in the target language or in English. Another one, it's a gap fill, very similar to what I mentioned before. So you display a text, they can read it, and then you just read some words, the key words you want them to practice, and they have to be able to spell it and hear it, obviously. So it's a good sometimes start activity where you read something, you focus on some words, and then you provide them with this kind of copy, and they have to complete it. Okay. Another one is talking about gap fill. Sometimes I just find a text in a book and I just get rid of some words. So this is an example of what I did in my 11 class when we were learning about environment. I just got rid of some words, made them listen to it. They knew the text, but it was a nasty surprise from my side because we did it 2 weeks after they had explored the text. And obviously the reaction is, oh, well, we've done it. I say, yes, that's why you should now get 100%. Show me you can do it. And lots of students did well, but some of them still struggle with some words. And I have to say I wasn't very mean because I got rid of some relatively easy words. So I wasn't really focusing on the very challenging ones. And in prep for to this listening about environment, just as an example, I provided them with a word search. And as you can see, this word search is different because one is in French, one in English with words in English or in French, but the word search itself is exactly the same. So the one on your right, this is, sorry, the one on your left, this is the one I would provide my students first with. So they just have to find, let's say, déboisement, poubelle, protégé, and they just look for it. So those words are already in French here. And obviously I would encourage them to translate it. Now here, those words are in English, but here they are in French. So if you're gonna do it a week later, you're checking, is this translation and this word hasn't been effective, and can they find it? Because it's the same, they can actually cross-mark it and check it later, but that's gonna really prep them for this listening that we'll be exploring. So what I'm saying is it doesn't have to be a dictionary work. It doesn't have to be translating some sentences. It can be also something as simple and enjoyable as crossword or word search, which can also be a good prep for listening. So we've talked about the gap fill. Now, hearing the difference, I know that this one requires a little bit of preparation from your side, but if you have a listening, you can provide your students with options, 2 options, 3 options, and that makes it more accessible for low ability students, or maybe boosting class morale after some difficult listenings where they have a choice and they only have to listen. And again, some of the words can be very similar. You can try to trick them. Again, recognizing cis, elle says, or en ville, à Lille. It can sound quite similar, but it's going to encourage to listen for some differences, and also maybe learn, is it un joli village, une jolie ville? Can they hear those differences? Or en juillet, en juin, lots of students cannot refer to how you spell it, so they should be, you're not only fishing for their understanding of words when they hear it, but also do they know how it's spelled? So again, coming back to this matrix idea. And that brings me to another idea, which is revisiting the material you had taught a few weeks ago is definitely recommended, especially when it comes to listening. Because if they had done listening 3 months ago, their score should be much better today. And if it isn't, that means there is some reinforcement of certain structures that is really required to get them to a level you want them to be on. So also you can revisit the same listening, but provide them with different questions. So again, you can say, okay, I know we've done it, but this time my questions are different. Or maybe this time, instead of answering in English, I want you to answer in the target language. You can offer them with lots of options, even for the same text. Another good strategy as a build-up for listening is just noting anything you've understood, especially if it's something maybe a little bit more challenging. So everyone is involved, so it becomes a little bit differentiated and inclusive, and say, okay, we're gonna listen, please note any words if you understood. So nothing specific. You can obviously challenge the most able and say, you can give them a hint, okay, can you maybe see how many tenses have been used, or who is talking, but otherwise just noticing anything. Another strategy is highlighting the sentences they've heard. So you can hide the text and sentences from the text they're gonna listen to and you can mix it with a different text, and all they have to do, they have to only highlight the ones they can hear. A little bit of fun, but again, it's more encouraging, and it makes it a little bit competitive and challenging, and students like it. So it's a nice treat from time to time to bring them on board. Another thing, if you want to upset your students occasionally, is true or false in the target language. So it is reading an obvious or ridiculous statement, especially the one that can really upset them. So, and students have to divide it into true or false. So for instance, you can make a controversial statement. For instance, I ragazzi lavorano più duro che le ragazze, that boys work harder than girls. And obviously, I'm pretty sure if you do it in the target language, there will be some kind of response and discussion, and they're gonna definitely very happily note it on the true or false section. Or for instance, you can say that Spanish is an official language of Mexico, which is true. Also a little bit of intercultural understanding here. And they have to listen to try to understand. You can make it competitive. So those who place it in the true or false section can be boys against girls, or table against table, or let's say sol brilla forte, where sun shines bright. And it's an obvious statement, but as I said, you can also make, knowing your class, you can also try to stir some emotions to really make them involved and respond to it, whether it's true or false. Vocabulary bank is a great prep where any mind maps, any providing them with some just list of words, and those list of words are extremely useful and helpful. The ones from LinguaScope, for instance, it's also a very good prep for listening. Now, making them read something they're gonna listen to, or they had listened to, also is a good practice. What you can do, I'll give you one example, is let's imagine you did listening, and a few weeks later, you provide a student. So you have students in pairs, A and B, and student A is reading this text to student B. Student B cannot see it, has to be listening for it, and has to guess what the text is about. So it's not very specific, but someone is practicing reading, someone is practicing listening, and just you turn it into a listening comprehension. Are they recognizing it? Do they know what it's about? How much can they say about the text? And then you can swap, providing student B with a different text. So reading is also a good practice because they read, listen, and speak at the same time. So another matrix. I love this website. It's a free app, Spreader. Please make a note of that. It's great for speaking and reading. And again, why I'm saying that? Well, my session is about listening, and be wondering, why is he talking about that? It's because you can display as a starter activity, you can make them spread it. I'm going to demonstrate it in a second. You can spread it, leave it for the next 20, 35 minutes, and then you make them listen to what they had read at the beginning of the lesson. So they're going to have some kind of recollection about what they read already. And also students really like to read it. So let me demonstrate it. So what is Spreader about? Spreader out. So this is the application. You should be able to see it. And if you enter the text you want your students to read, you can, in settings, you can set average reading speed, and you just play it, and your students have to read it. So antes, no, me gustaba hablar, otra lengua, ahora, o, and so on, so on. And students really love it because also they read like robots. It makes them laugh, it makes them happy, but also actually they read in the target language. By the way, I'm learning Spanish, so I'm really sorry if my pronunciation wasn't up to scratch. I started learning last month, so any Spanish speakers, you must have noticed his Spanish isn't great. So Spreader, it's a very good prep for your making your students read what they're gonna listen to a little bit later. Now, song is always great. Can be a very easy song like the ones you present at Key Stage 2, but also you can make very cool, and also knowing your class, you can really turn your listening into fun. And I presented students with lots of songs that they would listen to after school, or they would say that was really great. Or I still remember the song we did 2 or 3 weeks ago, or 2 or 3 years ago. So it's strongly encouraged, especially maybe around Christmas time, or when we have special occasions or languages week. It's a great opportunity to expose students and actually make them listen for some keywords from some artists. Listening versus dictation. I think dictation is also a very good strategy to reinforce some difficult parts of one's listening. You can dictate instead of providing your students with a transcription of the listening. You can actually dictate it to them. So they have to write it, and then obviously they can check the spelling against their understanding. So you turn it into writing/reading. So it's a good, and writing at the same time, because they have to be practicing and seeing if the spelling was correct. So it also encourages sometimes differentiating it by not only providing them answers, but actually dictating some key phrases and seeing whether they can spell it. Another one can be to categorize it and scaffold it. So you ask some basic questions at the very beginning when they listen to something. You can ask some more specific questions where they have to answer true or false, or is that positive or negative? So maybe there are some different 3 or 4 people speaking, and they just have to, you just make it very easy. You ask some basic questions. What is it about? What are they talking about? They're talking about holiday. Okay, who is positive or negative about? So they listen again, and they just say at the very end, you just pause it. And after each speaker, they have to react to it. Then maybe they have to order events. So maybe you already agreed that someone, that it's not going to be different people talking about holiday, but maybe your listening will be about something happening, and you can provide them with just some keywords in English or in the target language, and they have to listen again. And as they listen, they have to, again, it doesn't involve any cutting out because we don't want to have extra work, just display 5 events in English or in the target word. They just write, let's say, A, C, D, B in the books. After that, once they listen to it already a number of times and they had some hints about what's positive, what's negative, or in what order things are happening, you can start asking some more specific questions. And at the very end, they could just order the paragraphs once they see transcription and check the answer. So again, I would call myself a lazy teacher because I very rarely mark listening with my students. I just throw the transcription back at them and say, please have a look, read it, mark it, use a dictionary, and ask me any questions at the very end, because I know very often we feel we don't have enough time to do listening, but if we're gonna think of listening as a writing and reading practice, we're gonna find more time for that. Another way could be to reduce and transform it. What I mean by that, you can write one sentence. So for instance, they listen to something and they have to just write one sentence about. That can be easily differentiated because you can say, write 2 or 3 sentences about, or they can write the opposites. I know this is more of a probably key stage late, key stage 3+ example, but let's say if someone is making a complaint about, maybe they can be positive about, just giving an example, or they can note only places, only names, or only verbs. So again, a very specific listening for different structures. And that gets me to the next slide, which is about listening homework ideas, which can be easily used at Key Stage 2, especially with Google platform and lots of owner resources that we have been using in the last few months. I mentioned LinguaScope. I know there's a subscription, you have to pay for it, but it is very useful and it's differentiated for Key Stage 2, 1, 2, and up to Key Stage 4. And I think also Key Stage 5 lately. Also Kerboodle and CPD books or Revision Word, that's a free website where you can find some past papers, but also some resources for Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3 are very, very useful. I would definitely recommend those materials. Song, so sorry, I was talking what they are, how it links to homework. Well, LinguaScope obviously has lots of listening exercises where you can encourage your students to go to a specific section and practice it on the mobiles or from home. Or Kerboodle also have lots of listening, so revision words. So students can, you can also separate a file, a specific file, and just put it on Google Classroom or share it with your class via email, whatever system you use with your students, and they have to listen to something specific. You can set specific tasks, specific questions. The same way you can say, okay, listen to this song, and you can provide them with just some gap transcription, and they have to put some words maybe that they have been exploring in the last lesson. So it's a kind of a different, enjoyable homework. A movie, probably, again, this is more secondary school, but they can only maybe watch to a specific passage. So you can say, okay, only minute 37 to 40, and maybe the homework would be, okay, they can say what they've understood, but also what would you say? What would you say in this situation? How would you react? Or describe in one sentence what happens. Or describe in one sentence the setting where they are, or what they are eating. So a movie or short video on YouTube is always a mine of ideas. You can find lots of clips which can be easily become a homework. Interview, podcast, piece of news can be also a great piece of homework where they have to maybe comment on it. Maybe they just have to respond what it's about or what they think about. Story, I mean, everyone likes a good story. So maybe you can encourage your students to watch a story or listen to a story, and then they have to illustrate it or summarize it, or maybe write a review. Selection is whose point of view do you agree with and or you disagree with. So maybe there is you present your students with listening, where they talk about a topic, and they have to say, let's say there are 5 speakers or 3 speakers whose ideas you agree or disagree with. So it's very inclusive and encourage students to think about what they stand for. Addition is extending someone's opinion or description. So for instance, they listen to someone talking about, and they have to add an additional sentence, what this person also could have said at the very end. And the last one is prep. So this is vocabulary revision for listening. So you can provide maybe a list of words that are read by someone that, I know lots of books have those reading, or just like LinguaScope have lots of words, single words that can be read or listened to, and that preps your students. It's a short, pleasant listening homework, which can be done many times, and students can differentiate it by themselves. Okay, I'm gonna definitely finish on time. I have just one more slide, which is about interleaving practice. So I presented lots of ideas how you can make your listening inclusive, differentiated, and different strategies you can apply, so students do not always feel that every time they have listening is going to be listening, question, answer, providing with the answers. That's it. So definitely intervals versus it should be VS, not BS. Block provision. So block provision would be doing a piece of listening and leaving it and never coming back to it again. The interval teaching definitely is more effective. So revisiting the same things, I would definitely recommend it. There is a 42% memory drop after a month, and you can also have a look at this curve of forgetting, and it's really obvious how much students can forget up after 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. Now imagine for months. So you can also have an announced mini test. So you can say, okay, I know we are studying now future study and jobs, but we're going to have a listening about environment next week. So you give a little hint, or you don't, and they can see how they are progressing and see how much they've forgotten. So that can be any homework task can help you with that. So again, your homework doesn't have to be related to the topic they are studying. You can turn it into a challenge to make it more competitive. Remembering always that less is more. So sometimes redoing things, recycling things has more effect than constantly bombarding them with something new and more challenging, where potentially we can be leaving lots of students behind. So fewer things in greater depth, and that will make them listen like no other. I think, just taking the time, this is 3 minutes for questions. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to stop sharing now. So okay, this is my, by the way, sorry, I'm just going to quickly display my email. So that's my work email if anyone has any specific questions after the session. And I'm going to stop sharing if anyone has any questions. I'm just going to have a look at, you can just type it in now. There are lots of comments. Thank you for all the thank yous, and I hope you find it useful. And lots of ideas about quizzes, for instance. Thanks so much for your contributions. I didn't mention there are so many strategies. Yeah, just running through the chat. That is what I didn't want to take my attention away. But thank you much for attending. Have a good afternoon. And it was a pleasure presenting you. It's like spreading. I'm trying to catch up with all the comments, but thank you much. I appreciate your comments. It's a question about cycling too. How would you? I think how are there any other ideas? I think linking to previous learning. So anything that you're gonna link is whether it's gonna be a translation or something you're gonna listen to would be a good practice. Thank you. And thank you for saying my Spanish pronunciation isn't bad. So there's still some hope. Thank you. So someone is asking about the word search I mentioned. So the idea is, instead of providing your students with words or sentences in the preparation bit, what you do, you provide them with a word search. So they have lots of keywords that they're gonna come across in listening. So you entertain them initially with a word search. So you have, let's say, words are in English, but those words appear in the word search in, let's say, in Spanish, and they have to now find. So let's say if they see rain, they have to now find rain in Spanish in the word search. So it makes them think, do I know how to say rain? If I don't, I need to check it in a dictionary, and then I'm going to find it in the word search. So they are visualizing it, they are translating it. Then when they listen, obviously, it's more likely they'll be able to understand rain. You can present them with the same word search in Spanish to Spanish. So words are already in Spanish, and they have to find it in Spanish. So it would be easier, but then they have to translate from Spanish to English. So if they are looking, let's say, for a specific word, they have to understand and be able to explain what it's about, because that's going to appear in the listening. So what I'm saying is just an invitation to do a word search, which is very closely related to the topic they're going to listen to. What did you mean by addition? What do I mean by addition? I think addition was about homework. So it was, so you extend someone's opinion. So you listen to something, someone speaking about something, and they have to add an extra sentence about what someone would have said, or maybe what you can add more about what. It's just basically extending someone's opinion, or adding more ideas. Okay, just looking here. So just looking at question answers. Is there anything else? Are we going to get a copy of presentation? It's definitely yes. You will get a copy of the presentation. I know it's going to be online. If you can't do the translation, what are this? Would you do having for to answer this one? Okay. To listen. Yes, my talk will be available online. Well, okay, if you see them once a week, I would probably do at least one listening activity. At least one listening activity. It can be very short, can be responsive, yes or no, true or false. Samantha, can we have a copy of the presentation? I think it's going to be published online, definitely. And if it doesn't appear online, I would give it a face. It's not going to go online straight away because there are too many speakers today. But if nothing happens by the end of next week, please use my email. How would you support students with the strange tones and voices in recording? I think it's prepping. The more help you give at the beginning, or maybe preparing them, saying, okay, they're going to be speaking fast, or maybe providing them with some prompts will definitely reinforce the listening. Sorry, what did you mean by CPD? CPD, it's a company which publishes lots of books, revision books. So if you just Google CPD, they have lots of revision books for GCSE and also for different languages and subjects. And I use lots of it. So CPD is the name of the company, publishing company. Could you please explain a bit more about the spreader activity? So spreader activity, you just enter a sentence, any text, you paste it, and you set, and it displays by word at the speed you're gonna set. So it turns into a speaking and reading activity for the class. And as they read something, and always, it's a really fun activity, they love it, you can make them listen to what they read. So it's kind of a prep because they read it already, they saw it already, so they should be able to understand it more when it's only listening. Just try it for yourself. Just go to Spreader free app and you're gonna see how much you can do with your class. Thank you very much for that. Thank you so much, Maria. Charlotte, can we get your presentation? I answered that. Any ideas for English learners? It's the same principle for English, any languages really. I give example in different languages. So you can always provide the more prompts before a listening activity you provide your students with, the more successful they're gonna be. So it's all about scaffolding and linking and making it very matrix-wise, so linking your listening to writing and speaking. Will you have access? Yes. How long would you spend doing some? Yes. That. Okay. Sorry. I think it took me to the same questions again, but thank you so much. And okay, great listening resources online. Well, there are lots of resources online. I think if you just type in, for instance, listening French exercise, you're gonna find lots of different resources, but also like primary languages website has lots of listening of stories, BBC Learning Zone, and also what I mentioned was, I mentioned one of them, went blank now, but there was one more that I mentioned in my presentation that you can use for listening.
Witold, sorry to crash into your talk.
Yep.
And forgive me, I hope the audience will forgive me. We need your room for another session about to start.
That's fine.
So
When I wrap
can
it
I
up
ask you to wind up?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you on behalf of the audience for a brilliant talk, which has clearly been massively appreciated. So, so kind to give up some of your Saturday morning for this.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.